Hello, my name is Marie-André Lamontagne. I am the programming director of the Blue Metropolis International Literary Festival in Montreal. The in-person program of the festival will take place from April 24th to April 27, 2025. And the general theme of this 27th edition is Time, the Tree, the Page. Among our international guests, there will be American author Stephen Graham Jones. He is the winner of the Blue Metropolis First People Literary Prize International Edition. And we thought we'd give you a sneak preview of his visit to Montreal in the short interview that will start in a moment. Dr. Nathan Elliott, who is an avid reader of crime and horror fiction, among many qualities, will do the interview, and I will leave it to him to present Stephen Graham Jones. So, Nathan, Stephen, we are all ears.
Thank you, Marie. And yes, I'm here with Stephen Graham Jones, New York Times bestselling author, and I think most recently the author of I Was a Teenage Slasher. Is that your most recent?
It is, yes. I think that is my
Okay.
most recent book. Yeah, unless it could be that the third trade of Earthdivers might have come out since then. The number
Right.
three one,
Okay. So,
1776. Yeah.
but we're right in the mix there. I thought
Yeah.
I would focus the conversation today on I Was a Teenage Slasher,
Okay.
just to give us some focus and because it's kind of the one that's grabbed my attention thus far. It plays into a lot of the things that I really enjoy reading in this kind of fiction and the kinds of things I enjoy teaching as well.
Thank you.
So I will jump right in.
Hmm.
Do we become the genres that we read? Your protagonists in this novel, they're gradually finding themselves, they're becoming aware. I'm in a slasher movie.
Hmm.
I'm in a slasher narrative. And the more that, they try to use that information to break free of the momentum of that narrative. But of course, in that kind of Greek tragedy way, the more you fight against it, the more you become
Hmm.
what you're fighting against. And I thought maybe that was the horror of it. You become the things that you read.
Hmm.
Amber and Tolly can't help but kind of play this out. Is that part of the dread that we feel as readers?
So that's a really interesting way to come at that. I had not considered that, but yeah, we're all like walking in Don Quixote's footsteps, aren't we? We read too many romances, and now we're going out on journeys and missions and quests. And it's not quite as voluntary on Tolly and Amber's part, but let me think. Tolly, he didn't actually engage slasher, media. So he, I feel like he like fell into a well. He got his foot stuck in something, and now he has to walk and walk and walk like that. But Amber, you're right. She knows the slasher rules, the slasher conventions, and that is where a lot of the dread comes from, I think, is she has, I don't know if I'd call it foreknowledge, but she has genre awareness anyways.
Sure. Okay, good. That plays into my next question um, in a roundabout way. So
Yeah.
this one's a little bit more general, and then I'll probably narrow this down a bit. But in your opinion, why do there's the whole horror genre out there, but when you get to the slasher, the subfield, it pretty much, as far as I can tell, it has to be high school, right? Um, it's hard for me to imagine this happening outside of high school,
Mhm.
but I'm not sure why. Why do high
Mhm.
school and slasher movies and slasher narratives go together like this?
I think that the narrative, maybe it's the beats of the actual story. They seem to line up really well with coming of age stories. And coming of age doesn't only happen during adolescence, but that is kind of when we think of of age, we think of either going from 12 to 13 or 17 to 18. That's kind of the two big hinge points we see. I think there's coming of age rituals all through life. Therefore, I think there's a lot of slasher terrain yet to be mined. However, part and parcel of the slasher is everyone is stupid enough to go to the party that they shouldn't go to, you know? But
Right.
by the time you're 35, you're like, I think I'll just stay home and watch Law and Order. But when you're 17, you got to go to the
Right.
party. And so it makes it easier to tell the story if it's in high school, I think.
Sure. I wondered if there's something inherently traumatic about high school as someone who's raising a teenager right now.
Hmm.
Um, I get
Yeah,
reminded, there's a little bit of a horror movie in every day when you turn 13, 14, 15 years old.
there is. You're totally right. I mean, when you're that age, all your emotions are like jacked up to 11 all the time. Somebody doesn't like your pants, your hair, or if you do something like if you make a gaffe online, it's all like the end of the world. And the slasher or really the horror genre shares that with the high school experience because the fun thing about horror for me is that it's always kind of at operatic levels of near melodrama. Everything is life and death, and everybody has having these extreme reactions and feelings. And I think that you're right. That is probably another reason why the slasher in high school line up really well.
So this one is, personally related. I grew up in American small towns in the 80s and
Hmm.
90s myself. So
Hmm.
the high school you're describing here, the town you're describing here is very, very familiar to me. 1989 is very vivid in my own mind as
Oh
kind of
yeah.
a key year. And when I teach my students any kind of fiction that takes us back into history, even just a little
Hmm.
bit. Um, it's about the past, but it's also about us here in the present.
Hmm.
So, the recent series Say Nothing, it's about the troubles in Ireland, but it's very much about this moment in 2024 as
Hmm.
well. For all kinds of geopolitical reasons, that story is resonating with us right now. Why 1989? Why did you take us back to 1989, do you think? And were you conscious of that, or is
You know,
that
I wish I could have like conscious decision making in my novel writing, but I've never been that fortunate. What happened was I had The Angel of Indian Lake due, and then I thought I'm gonna see if I can sneak write another novel before I have that novel due. I only had like 5 months to write Indian Lake, but I thought surely I can do two novels in 5 months. And so I sat down to write Teenage Slasher, and because I knew the clock was already ticking on me, that I had no time for any research. And when I don't have time for research, I always go back to West Texas. And because I left West Texas in 1990, basically, the West Texas I know is 1989, pretty much. I mean, I grew up there my whole life, more or less, but 1989, you're right. It's very like it's the right word, pungent. It's like a pungent year for me. It's like when everything was coalescing into some sort of permanent state or something. I don't know. I'm not really sure about that, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Well,
But
I've
you're but
noticed
but
this with
you but you're right though. Um, it's and also when I went back, I was 17 in 1989, so that's why I made Tully 17, so he could know the same things I know, so I didn't have to do a lot of research, you know.
right, sure, yeah. Did you find when you went back to 1989, were you noticing things about 1989 that you hadn't, from your perspective up here in 2024 that you wouldn't have noticed when you were 17?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. Like number one, just the racism is the big thing, racism and
Sure.
homophobia. Because back in 1989, we were aware of it, but the world wasn't as aligned against it, and it was eye-opening to me to go back and look at the way things used to be because I don't spend a lot of time thinking about wow what we think in 1989, but I had to for Teenage Slasher, and it was revealing. And you were right what you were saying earlier that if I write a novel about 1989, it's really about now. The same way science fiction is never about 2044 or whatever. It's always about today's world as like seen through this
Yeah,
animation or whatever,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's another thing I tell my students. The utopia is about now. The dystopia is about now.
Hmm.
Mad Max is happening to us even now.
Man, yeah.
Okay, so with all that in mind, I teach everything from the ancient Greek playwrights up to, you know, novels like yours, actually.
Hmm.
And I really feel like the tragedy, horror, this whole group of things, the kill scene, as I would
Hmm.
call it, whether it's back there in Medea or it's, in Macbeth or,
Hmm.
I was a
Hmm.
teenage slasher, that this is, we were drawn to horror because it helps us cope with the horror of our reality. We do
Hmm.
enjoy it. We're drawn to it, repeatedly been drawn to it for thousands and thousands of years because it, in some way, shape, or form, helps us process reality today. our everyday reality. Do you see it that way? And how does the slasher genre help us process our actual reality, even when we're not being chased by a Tolly, you know?
Yeah, no, you're totally right. I agree with you too. Yeah, I mean, of course, we all know that horror is a funhouse mirror, distorting back our own fears and anxieties and issues of the day and everything, which is a big reason why it sticks around, I think. I think horror stories were the first stories we told around the campfire. They were the fun stories, the ones that the
Right,
hunters came
sure.
back with from Three Valleys over, And they tried to make themselves sound a lot grander than they were. They might have faced a bobcat, but it became a saber-toothed tiger by the time they got back
Right,
home.
sure.
You know. But
Of
but
course, yeah.
um I think what horror media, be it film, novel, short story, whatever, when you're trudging through that horror story, you're basically trying to survive a long, dark, scary tunnel. And what the end, like, we know this book has 340 pages or whatever, and we know that by the time we get to 340 pages, we're going to be to the end of that tunnel, be it good or bad. We're going to have processed through the horror. And that's why we need horror, I think, because the world we live in now feels like that big, dark, long, scary tunnel. But these horror stories tell us that there's going to be an ending to it. We're going to, if we just keep walking and keep surviving, we can make it to that light at the end. And it may be a train, who knows, but we'll make it to the end anyways. And I think it's comforting. It's weird that something as transgressive and off-putting as horror can be comforting, but I think it is comforting finally.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. And I think actually that's a new thought. It's something about the end, the conclusion, the last page, knowing it's out there, that there will be this too shall pass, I suppose,
Hmm. Hmm.
even if it's with page 365.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. I think that's about 10 minutes, Marie. Do you think that that's
Yeah, well, that's just a beginning, and this conversation, how interesting it was really, and it will. This conversation will continue during the festival. I just realized that I didn't mention at the beginning that Stephen Graham Jones, you are talking from Colorado, right, at the
Hmm.
moment,
Hmm.
and that also that you are part of the Pikunis Nation. Is
Yep.
that
Yep.
true?
Yep.
Pikunis is the right name for the Blackfoot, right?
Yeah, we're the black in America we're called Blackfeet, but in Canada we're the
Blackfeet, yeah.
Blackfoot. Yeah.
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 Okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
So this conversation, we will soon welcome you in Montreal. We are very happy about that, and I think
Mhm.
you will be happy. You will enjoy your stay in Montreal.
Thank you.
Nathan, thank you very much for
Yes,
this.
thank you.
Just let's say sneak preview of
Mhm.
what is waiting at the festival. Thank you very much, both of you,
Mhm.
Stephen Graham Jones, Nathan Elliott.
Thank you. Thank you, Nathan.
Thank you so
It was, it
much.
was
Thank
great
you. It
talking.
was great. Yeah.
Goodbye, y'all.